if it were new, I would be like, and we're hoping it will do this, and we're hoping it will do that. But we've been doing this for 7.5 years, and it is astounding how beautiful people's work is. And it's beautiful to me to see people come into a room and think they might not be a writer. Oh gosh, I'm probably not a writer. I probably shouldn't be doing this. Why do I have no right to do this? And so we try to give people permission. We're not trying to give them permission. We're trying to like push them to give themselves permission to write, and try to encourage them to trust the story, trust whatever's coming out, even if it sounds like isn't related at all to what they want to be writing. Just trust the process a little bit, and it's amazing how it all links back together.
Welcome to Première, Personne, a podcast about vulnerable storytelling where we unpack the transformative power of first-person narratives. I am your host, Brune. Hello and welcome. Today I'm really excited because Domi Shoemaker is on the podcast. I had such a great conversation with them and I'm thrilled to share it with you. Domi J. Shoemaker is a gender-free writer who lives near Portland, Oregon. Domi spent several years with Tom Spanbauer's Dangerous Writers and started the quarterly reading series Burnt Tongue in 2012, just before snatching a gig with Lidia Yuknavitch for the launch of Dora, a Headcase. While finishing an MFA in writing from Pacific University in 2015, Lidia asked Domi to help create the Corporeal Writing Seasonal Creative Lab series. Domi is now the Seasonal Workshop Lead Facilitator, Corporeal Center Manager, as well as Prime Holder of Space. Before we dive in, I just wanted to let you know that from September 3rd to October 29th of 2023, I am running a writing and self-publishing program. It's called Write Your Book Already. I don't know if you know, but Brune Brown's first book was self-published. And for me, self-publishing is all about not waiting for someone else to give you permission to be you and to share your art, knowledge, and wisdom with the world. The first 5 weeks of the program are focused on writing and revision, and the last 3 weeks are dedicated to the self-publishing process. I will be with you every step of the way, all the way to the publish line. It's truly a transformational container because in 2 months you go from someone with a book idea to published author, and then you get to watch the repercussions of your book being out into the world, both in your own life and in other people's lives. If that is of interest, go to experiencenarrative.com and join the book gang in the Write Your Book Already program. I can't wait to see you in there, but for now, here's my conversation with the phenomenal Domi Shoemaker. Hello, Domi.
Hello, Brune. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm always tempted to be like, Bonjour, Brune, comment allez-vous? And it's like, basic French. Because,
great. I love it. Ça va très bien, merci. And actually, my first question is, can you say première personne and then say what those two words bring up for you?
Yes, I can. Première personne. And it brings up, well, I could tell you all the things that it brings up. It actually brings up the fanciful notion I had in my head when I was a child that I was going to go to France. And I was going to live in France. And I was going to be, my first pen name, actually, was Dominique Francois Leblanc. because yeah, right, because my grandmother's name was Frances. My grandfather's original last name was Leblanc, and they, when they moved to the US, they changed it to White. He was from Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, and then and my name Domi, I changed it to Dominique Francois Leblanc when I was like 14. That was my pen name. Is that
oh
cute?
My goodness, I love it. So cute. I actually have cousins whose name is Leblanc.
Oh, wow. Maybe we're
cousins, Domi.
Yeah, I bet we are.
Cool. Um, and then if you say it in English, first person, what does that make you think of?
It just makes me think of writing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's your avenue.
Yes. Writing and teaching and talking about first person. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you paint us a picture of where you are?
Sure. I am in my office. We'll start micro. I'm in my office, which is pretty big, and I'm very happy about it because it's pretty new to me. I've lived here for a year, but it feels like I've only lived here for a couple of months. But so I'm in this spacious office with dark colors and a white ceiling, but the walls are all dark, and so I feel really contained. It's really nice. And then right outside, I have French doors that go out into the dining room. And then right here next to me, I have this big double window that lets in a lot of light. So, this place is on a piece of land in Oregon, in the United States, near Portland, Oregon, on stolen land. I'm going to acknowledge that, although I don't have the list of. I don't have the actual where I'm living. I don't know exactly what tribe lived here. Anyway, I'm living on stolen land, and I'm living in the United States, and a lot of trees around me, and lots of trees and green and quiet space, which is great. But I live in a just it's like this sort of like a suburb, but it doesn't feel suburban. It feels like it's actually an older town that was here that Portland sort of grew into. So it's not like suburban feel at all. It's like a little town outside of Portland. That's the feel of it, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, that's where I am.
It's great. It's perfect. Recently, I heard this thing that this person who said, who you are is what you love. And so I have a list of 10 rapid fire questions for you.
I love these kind of things. Yes, I love these kind of things.
Let's do it. Okay. A song or a music artist you love?
I'm supposed to be rapid fire? Okay.
Yeah.
A song, I still love so many. I'm just going to say Prince, because that's an all-time favorite.
Nailed it. Awesome. A book you loved reading in the last couple of years?
I have two, actually. I have Verge from Lidia Yuknavitch and Thrust. And but there's actually one more that's like two more. One, do I have to do this one? Yes. Okay.
Go for two. It's fine.
I think I'll just go.
Or four.
Okay. Sorrowland is an amazing book by Rivers Solomon, who's a non-binary person who apparently now lives in England. But their writing is it's amazing. It's a confluence of a bunch of different stuff, but it's sort of post-apocalyptic, sort of. Yeah, but it's a cool book. Anyway, there's supposed to be rapid fire, and there's nothing rapid about my speech, so
it's great. No, I love it.
Okay.
The name of a friend who keeps you honest?
Oren.
Sweet, savory, or spicy?
Savory.
What are your pronouns?
They, them, theirs.
Your definition of a life well lived?
One in which you can say that you moved toward your dreams, even if you didn't completely reach what your dreams were, but that you continually assess and move toward things that help represent your most true nature and your true self. Yeah, I think that is a life well lived. Like, if you can get to my age and be like anything on my list when I was a little kid, if you get to that, I think if you get to that age and you'll be like, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. So maybe you're not an astronaut, maybe you got a job at an airport. Like if you've made some headway, I feel like I wanted to be a writer and a social worker when I was a kid. I wrote a short story about being a writer and about a writer and a social worker. and that's what I
And
wanted to
you
be.
ended up
And
being both.
yes, yes. And I didn't like, I really, the social work one I figured, but I had so much grief around the idea that I was never going to be a writer. For years, I had so much grief around it because I still wrote, but I didn't have any kind of writing community or any kind of writing. I didn't have any education or even like little classes about writing. I mean, I did in junior college, but like, and then when I went back to get my master's degree, I fell into a writing class and completely left social work because I'm like, this is what I've needed to do. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I'll come back to what you just said.
Okay.
What's your favorite 90s outfit?
Probably any
Or accessory?
90s. That was just yesterday. Bandana. It's got to be
Yeah,
bandana. But that was
love it.
around a little bit in the 80s and 90s, like
Yeah.
70s. But I keep that one around. And also, I mean, Docs became super big everywhere in the 90s. So Doc Martens too are two of my favorite things,
Yeah.
bandanas and Doc Martens. You can always find them in my wardrobe.
Nice. Um, a writing teacher who had a great impact on you.
From my Mrs. Jones in 10th grade. I mean, I have a lot more now, but like some of
Yeah.
my initial people, there was Mrs. Shows in 9th grade and Mrs. Jones in 10th grade who really, really opened it up for me, who made me think I could be a writer.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Favorite love language?
The obvious one is food,
Yeah.
like somebody making a meal and saying, "Oh, this is for you," um,
Yeah.
is one. But I also really, really like. There's something about singing and or lyricism in language, in when we talk. Like it, I end up um, having respect for and feeling soothed by thoughtful language.
Hmm. Sweet. And finally, one good thing that happened to you in the last 24 hours.
There's lots of good things that happened in the last 24 hours. Now I'm like, what? Oh, I found out that the current sort of campaign that we're doing at Corporeal, and I'm really, it really does make me like genuinely happy because we've got these portal cards that we've got now that they're oracle cards or divination cards, so but what's
Yep.
on them is writing portals. And and what made me very, very happy, and the good news is they're a hit. But the part of that makes,
Yay!
I know they're totally a hit. We've sold like 150 sets already in one day, 2 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so the reason it makes me so happy is because like I wrote a bunch of the portals, and then Janice, like everybody, what makes me so happy about it is that now they can kind of be out in circulation and keep the conversation going about writing and like how to really tap into what your body is telling you in writing. And it's not just bodies of humans, it's bodies of all kinds of things, bodies of plants, bodies of animals, bodies of, anyway, it's all very exciting to me.
Yeah.
And so that was like really, really good news that they were a hit because I wanted them to be really badly.
Awesome. So we're going to back up a little bit, and because you just mentioned corporeal writing and portals. And for our listeners, can you tell us what those things are?
Yes. Corporeal writing is a writing community, a writing practice, a writing, dare I say, phenomenon now. I want to because it's just really done wonderfully in the past 7 years since we started it. Lidia Yuknavitch asked me to start this with her a little over 7 years ago after trying to get it started a couple of different times. She wanted to leave academia, which she had been in for, 25 years, teaching writing and, traveling the world and traveling around, doing different workshops and doing different things with different people all the time. But she kind of wanted to leave academia to see if she could start her own thing, which it was originally going to be a different name and a different person that she had thought about doing it with. And then it's like, well, that didn't quite pan out. The actual idea didn't even come to full fruition. The idea was just there. And then, so a while, I had been working with her on promoting Dora, a Headcase, one of her books. Yeah. So I was helping promote Dora with her, and then she hired me again to do some slush pile reading stuff when she was going to open back up her literary journal, which we started doing for a little bit, and then that wasn't quite the way. And then finally she was like, I want to start this thing and I want you to do it with me, but you're not allowed to tell me for 3 days whether you'll do it or not. So I had to sit on my yes for 3 days. It's like, of course I'm going to do. I had to sit on that yes for 72 hours. But I was like, but of course I will. I had no idea what I was going to do, but the corporeal writing is a wonderful thing. We have in person. We started out with only in person, quarterly. At the time, we called them workshops. We now call them creative labs. We're really trying to step away from all the old language that is tied to sort of the old patriarchal ways of doing things and of writing, putting together writing workshops and things like that. We call them creative labs. We say portals instead of prompts, because we really want to keep the idea going that it's all about opening up and expanding ideas and being open to different ideas coming in, rather than, so a portal is an idea that's like, it could be a crucible, it could be a way through, a way out, and a portal could also be in, and a way inward, which is what we do most. Is we help people by these portals, and by other writing practices, we help people find like try to get to the most true thing about what it is they're trying to write or trying to say, or the stories they need to tell, by like trying to like go around the thinker brain. And so the portals are often things like, you think, if you look at it on paper and you don't have any idea what it is, you're just like, oh, this is weird, what's going on here, you're like, you want me to write about my toes from age 1, age 10, age 20, what, every 10, why my toes, why would I write about my toes? But what's really interesting, the one thing we all have in common if we're writing, the one thing that everybody has in common is that we all have bodies, and our bodies
Agreed.
all have stories. And so, of course, you want to be cognizant of types of bodies and things like that. You don't really like, there's never anything specific about a type of body or anything like that. You just want to say things like, where in your body does this story live right now? Or where in your body does this word live right now? Or where in your body does this memory live right now? And things like that. And then we go through more steps and more steps and more steps, and to eventually you're down to like the truest truth that you can find for yourself. Not it, and it. The very important thing is that truth does not come from outside you; it comes from within you. And I'm not saying like you have to go down, dive, and find your truth. It's not about that. What I'm saying is, it's not, your story your story is in you, and nobody else can tell your story. And so we're just trying to help get you to that. So whether it's poetry or creative nonfiction or fiction or art, dance, any kind of movement, all of the things that we do can be either directly applied to or translated into a way to use those different methods of creative expression. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's kind of a circuitous way of saying
it's
it,
awesome.
But yeah, cool. Yeah, and if it were new, I would be like, and we're hoping it will do this, and we're hoping it will do that. But we've been doing this for 7.5 years, and it is
Mm-hmm.
astounding how beautiful people's work is. And it's beautiful to me to see people come into a room and think they might not be a writer. Oh gosh, I'm probably not a writer. I probably shouldn't be
Yes.
doing this. Why do I have no
Mm-hmm.
right to do this? And
Yeah.
so we try to give people permission. Not it's We're not trying to give them permission. We're trying to like push them to give themselves permission to write,
Right.
and try to encourage them to trust the story, trust whatever's coming out, even if it sounds like isn't related at all to what they want to be writing. Just trust the process a little bit, and it's amazing how it all links back together. Much of the time,
Mm,
most of the time, writing is very
yeah.
rich. Yeah, does that make
So
sense? Yeah,
if we
yeah.
have, pardon?
I just was making sure I made sense.
Yeah, for sure. And so if we have listeners right now who are kind of in that situation where they are tempted to write, but they feel awkward with their pen or with their computer, they feel like it's a big thing to write. They feel that every sentence has to make sense right away. Or
Oh
what's
yeah.
a piece of advice you can give them to sort of get started?
My piece of advice is find writing community. And even if it's
Mm.
not community, find another person that you could read to, and maybe they can read to you too. And even if you can't find somebody else who wants to write, find a way to say your words out loud if you can. If you are a speaking person, and if not, to write back and forth to each other, and have a way for somehow your words and your writing to be reflected back to you.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's probably the biggest thing for is is writing in community in some way, however that can happen. Which is, I don't know if you were going to talk about this next, but which is why we have a Corporeal Writing Center in downtown Portland, right? And then so when COVID hit, I started doing these virtual hours so people could write in community, and it's become this amazing thing, as you know, because you're doing it now. You're hosting, and it's amazing. I'm just so thrilled. Anyway, yeah, I didn't know if you were going
Yeah.
to talk about that at all, but I wanted to because it's just
And I didn't know if I could talk about that. So
absolutely.
yay. So yeah, listeners, if you want to write in community with corporeal writing, you can do it. There are several days throughout the week, every week, where you can drop in whenever you feel like writing in community. It's usually, it's a rather small group of people still. And I say that because some people tend to be intimidated by writing spaces.
For sure, for
Um,
sure.
I also want to say that it is the most welcoming space I've ever been in. I started attending virtual hours in October 2020 um,
Hmm.
with you, Domi, as the
Yeah,
facilitator.
yeah.
Um, and
That was our first
so
year
I've,
too of doing it. Yeah, you were within like the
yeah.
first 8 months, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I like you said, the fact that I was able to write in community, I got so much from it. My first of all, my writing did get better, and also I just got into this practice. I got much less intimidated by the practice of writing, um, and having first of all, reading your words out loud when you feel like doing so feels great. You integrate your own writing in a different way in your body.
for sure.
And then you get reflections from other writers. Um, then anyway, it's been wonderful. And a few months ago, I left Canada and I moved back to Europe. And for that reason, it got to be too late for me to keep attending.
Right.
I'm in Brussels currently, and virtual hours are the ones I was attending were on Mondays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific, which is 11 p.m. Brussels time. Anyway, so I reached out to you, Domi, and asked if I could facilitate hours that worked for Europe. So now I'm facilitating
And I was
Tuesdays,
so entirely happy to have you do it. And we worked it out. And how's it going? I know you're interviewing,
it's going
but
so well.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll go back to me asking you questions after, but thank you for asking. It's going so well. It's at 6:30 p.m. Paris, Brussels time on Tuesdays. For anyone listening, just send me a message. I'll send you all the links to attend Domi's or Carol's or my virtual hours. But I love it. You and I, Domi, had a couple of meetings before I started doing that to make sure that we that I knew how to do it in the corporeal writing way.
Yes.
And so you're a tremendous teacher, and I've really been enjoying creating my own portals every week.
Isn't that
practice
fun?
of knowing, like, the Tuesday's coming up. What am I going to, have them write about? And about those portals too. If you come to virtual hours and you want to actually write on something completely different or revise a piece that you've been writing, you can also do that. But sessions are 2 hours long, and we come into the room, we speak, we chat for like 15 minutes, we go away to write for an hour, and then we come back and read our pieces to each other. So yay.
Yes. It's wonderful to see people return and see over time how their writing has changed, and or how their confidence has changed in reading their work aloud, because that is one of the most difficult things to do. As people probably know, public speaking, blah, blah, blah. But what is really cool about these little rooms is that there's never been any more than 15 people, but usually it's somewhere between 3, 4, 5 people, maybe five, six people, sometimes 10, just depends. But the cool thing is you don't have to read if you don't want to, but I know people who really, 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 really did not want to read and had never read and out loud, and have come in and been able to develop their voice and figure out ways to actually take that work out into to read to other people as well. So it's a beautiful thing. And I happen to be an extrovert, which is kind of it. So it's easy for me to meet people and pull people in, but I'm actually probably an ambivert, because I also have a lot of I do a lot of quiet holding of the space. Not always quiet. Sometimes it's kind of babbly, but but I also try to hold the space. And Brune, I'm sure you hold. I've been twice to yours, and you hold the space very, very well. And I think people feel held and heard, and it's just really delightful. Really, it's just a kind and mellow space. And that's the whole thing with corporeal writing, is we're always free to, like, if we have an idea about doing something, Lydia's always like, yeah, go for it. I mean, I am an extrovert with ADD and a lot of information in my head. So sometimes I'll pitch stuff. She lets us pitch anything we want, not try anything we want, because there are sometimes when I have ideas that might not be so helpful. But like what I'm saying is, like, we're all free to pitch ideas about what we want to do. And just like in the room too, like in virtual hours, I like Brune was it was totally fine with asking me, pitching it to me, like I am fine with people pitching different ways of doing things in virtual hours, or like, and I think my point about all of this part of it is that corporeal writing is really an open space for being able to explore ideas and writing and things like that. And you'll get the feel when you come in what kind of people hang out there and what we do. There's all kinds of people who hang out and write.
Yeah, I did feel very comfortable asking you, and because I also knew that if it was a no for whatever reason, you were going to deliver it in a kind way, and it would make sense, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So
I'm so glad you're doing it.
So you mentioned, what's that?
I just said, I'm so glad you're doing it. And you're on our website.
Thanks.
Yeah, you can check it out on our website too. Corporealwriting.com. On the, I think it's community, we just changed the website. I think it's under community and events space, Corporeal Center.
I think so, yeah.
It's under the Corporeal Center section. So yeah, you can find it there on our website too.
And you mentioned that people who attend get more and more comfortable reading their words aloud. And another thing that I've noticed is that we also get more comfortable giving other people reflections. Can you talk about that?
Yes. A lot of times, let's see. Let me think of it from my perspective. People are usually very nervous about giving their opinions about other people's work, especially if they haven't written before or been in a group of people who give each other any kind of reflection or feedback about work. I'm also trying to stay away a little bit from the word feedback, because it has become, in writing circles, it has become, I need feedback. Like feedback is just, it's like a word that's used in a lot to mean, please recognize my writing and tell me what's wrong with it, you know, or tell me what you think of it. I want your opinion about my writing. And while those things might be helpful sometimes, I think what's more helpful, and what we found is what's more helpful, is to actually just reflect the words back to someone else. And because of that, and to reflect back, and sometimes you can talk about where it lands in your body or how it made you feel about the other person's work, makes you feel, and stuff like that. So it's much, I don't want to say it's easier, but it feels more accessible. You don't have to know anything about writing to know how that piece of work makes you feel. You could be like, well, you know, when you read that part about the kid biting the other kid's finger, the way you develop that and put it on the page with these words, blah, blah, blah. Like it really, like I felt it in my jaw. It was so intense, or whatever, you know? So teaching people to like even use their own bodies and their own instincts, and trust their own, they might not even know what their instincts are, but if you can slow down enough to actually feel where it lands on you, it gives people permission to be like, oh, okay. And then I can reflect this back to this person. I can say, oh, well, here's how it made me feel, and here's what I thought, and here are the words that really stood out to me. So you don't have to say, I really liked the way you developed the plot. I really liked the way you, well, of course, you're not going to say that in a minute anyway, because unless it's very, very short, microfiction. But I really like the way you use that adjective. Thank goodness you didn't use any adverbs with an ly ending. You know, like these are things that you hear in writing groups, critique groups all the time. And while instructive, they're not very helpful in actually furthering someone's writing. That sort of critique for some of us can be pretty damaging to our writing, mostly because it gets in the way of growth, because it's telling you to stop, don't do this, cut this out, when isn't it nicer to be here like, ooh, that little plot right there. I'm thinking of grass now. A little plot of grass. Your writing is a plot of grass, right? That little plot right there. Look, let's grow that one a little bit more. This one over here,
Yeah.
it's okay if you don't water it as much, but I don't, that makes sense. It's a weird analogy, but weird metaphor. But um, I think it gives people permission and teaches them how to um, edit, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And edit their own
Yeah.
work
And I think,
and listen to other people's work and give them confidence
mhm,
to learn a thing or two more because it helps you build. You keep building on it.
yeah. And one thing it has done for me is also to recognize that um, uh, it was another way of learning that my voice mattered, to give other people feedback.
Yay!
No, not
Yes.
feedback, reflections.
Reflections. Yeah.
Um, and to be more active or present in that communal space. Just take my place in that space,
Yes.
not just with the writing, but also with the reflections.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation your story with writing, how you wanted to be a writer from a young age, and then you sort of gave up on that idea and even grieved for it. What was it about writing specifically that was that drew you in?
Initially, when I was really, really young, before I had the conscious idea that I wanted to be a writer, I think it was probably like, I don't know. I honestly, the very first, I remember being 5 years old. I probably remember, no, I do remember. I remember being 5 years old and spelling the word encyclopedia and getting so much positive attention for that I could
Oh my
spell
God.
encyclopedia at 5 years old, and I would go around and I'd be like ENCYCLOPEDIA, encyclopedia, like because we had a set of like some church group or some community group. We were really poor, but some church group or some
Yeah.
community group or some sort of group had given us a set of old encyclopedias, and
Yes.
and so I, for whatever reason, I learned my letters and and apparently learned how to spell that really young. So the idea that words had power came to me at a really young age. So because at a young age I was noticed for words, and so I think going,
Right.
and then I was always noticed for like telling stories, and because telling stories about things and making up stories about um, the mouse that did this or that bunny did that, or you know just making up stories about the things around me. I would do that all the time, and then as I got a little older, I think at fourth grade, I think um, I wrote a little story that got some attention in school, and just things like that. So educators and teachers were so helpful for me, because those are the most positive things going on in my life when I get noticed for those kinds of things. I mean, I wanted to be an
Mm.
actor, I wanted to be a singer, I wanted to be like not wanted to be, but these were all the things I thought about. Ooh, but
Yeah.
writing kind of stuck because it's something that I could do on my own time in my own way, and it didn't necessarily have to have a lot of attention on me. Because while I am
Mm.
an extrovert and I do actually like being center of attention sometimes, to my own dismay, occasionally, um, I I need downtime. I need those places for quiet reflection and for quiet and like introspection and so because there's a lot of stuff in my life that was really heavy, writing really kind of saved my life, honestly, when I was much
Mm.
younger. So it started out more in sort of like, you know, angsty, sad poetry. And I should recite to you my first poem that I recited to, I wrote when I was 14.
You remember it?
Oh yeah, I have several poems that I can. Yeah, but this one is just like my heart just goes out to that 14-year-old kid. I got to tell you.
Yeah. Do you want to recite it now?
Sure, sure. He feels no pain, has no worries. Junkies, monkeys, escaping the fury in a jungle of the lost. Drunks, punks, how much will it cost? Maybe a nickel, maybe a dime, maybe his life, maybe his time. Just watch him shoot. He's so far behind. Watch it pollute his body and mind. He fries, he flies, the last great trip. He cries, he dies. Now who wrote the script?
Ah, I love it.
Isn't that
Thank
hilarious?
you.
I don't think I've ever, in any of my interviews, I've never actually recited that one. But I remember I was 14 years old and um, I had this weird, like, I'm queer as hell, but when I was a kid, I was like trying to figure out who I was. And I was dating this guy who was 19, who was never around and often drunk. And I was a 14-year-old who, that's when I started drinking actually, when I was really young, uh, and met this guy, and he was way too old. He didn't really want that much to do with me anyway, but in my head, he was my boyfriend. And his best friend came to me and like said, "You don't want to be with this guy. Look what he does." And he threw me this purple bag that had Crown Royal. It's purple Crown Royal bag, the alcohol bag, Crown Royal. It has this beautiful purple bag with Crown Royal. And anyway, he threw me this bag, and I like opened it up, and there was a rig because the guy had been shooting up and like pain meds or something. I don't even know what. It was like 1978 or something like that. So he was shooting up something. And I was like, I was a 14-year-old. I thought I was grown. I thought I was a grown up, but no. Anyway, so I wrote this story
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
or that poem about him. Did you even ask me that? Or did I just launch into the
It
story?
doesn't matter. It's I forget if I asked you about it, but
Yeah, but
I
so
love having.
I wrote
Yeah.
about, I always wrote about things that were going on around me and things that I was having a hard time with. Yeah, and
Yeah.
some fanciful things. I wrote one about the galaxy, like called Andromeda, about the Andromeda galaxy and this spaceship, like and, yeah, and it had mathematics in it and all this other stuff. So I was always writing some weird stuff and some fun stuff, but it really sort of helped me locate my pain and try to express it and relieve it. It's what it mostly did. It relieved my pain and pressure and about the things that were
Yeah.
going on around me. As that's, I'm sure a lot of people started writing in junior high and high school because of stuff like that.
Mm.
Is and that was the beginning of my writing journey. Then skip ahead, like I continued to write, but I thought I needed to make money at it. So not originally, but when I first went to community college, I started toward a degree in actually my associate's degree was mostly about uh, technical writing. So I thought, oh, writing and technical writing, but technical writing was burning out my creative writing stuff too. So, but I was going to go into engineering and all, like I tried all different kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And, fast forward 30 years and I started writing for realsies in about 2010.
Yeah. What does that mean? Writing for realsies.
I
What did
mean,
it look like for you?
what it looked for me is that I was in a place in my life where I was desperate to I had like my entire life I had this burning, like, it felt almost like when you're grieving someone really really hard. I had this like burning ball of this, some sort of like something to do with want and desire and grief, and like life. I had this burning thing in my gut that was pretty painful. So that it wasn't physical pain, but it was like I couldn't stop this feeling that I needed to write. I needed to write. I needed to express myself in that way. What was the question?
The question was, what did it look like for you when you started writing for realsies?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So that had always been there, and I'd been recognized for writing, multiple times from different people, but it was never like I never took or got into a writing group, or had never found writing community in the world around me, like classes here and there, like an English class here and there for part of my degree work. Yes, but not any extra support around writing or anything like that.
Right.
And so I was at a place in my life where I just really needed to figure out what that angst, not even angst, what was missing, that big missing something in my life. I always thought it was one thing or another, and tried to fill up that hole with all different kinds of stuff, but it never ever got full. And so I always had this sadness about writing, and like I sometimes I couldn't even read because it just like it made me so sad that I wasn't writing, or that I didn't know how to go any further.
Yeah.
And then I remember it one day, and the reason I remember it is because it was April 20th, which 420. And 420 doesn't mean the same thing to me as it means to like younger folks usually, but now it means that to me. I mean, I didn't grow up knowing what 420 meant, but now I know what
Yeah.
420 meant. So when I actually look back at
Can
my
you
notes,
tell us what that means? Because I think some Europeans don't know what that means. I
oh,
learned
good.
that when I moved to Canada. So tell us.
420 is like, and I apologize for not knowing the true origins of the word. But what I understand, I think, is a 420 originally started because a 420 was a code for somebody possession of marijuana, or like the police were, and then 420 became a time. The time 420 on 420 became the time where everyone around the world would pick up their joint or their pipe or their bong or whatever and smoke weed. So 420. So every day at 420, like there are people who go 420 to each other and like, hey, yo, bro, like or whatever,
Yeah.
Hey, man. Yeah. So that's what 420 is. So it was 420, and I wrote an email to two different people. One was a woman that I was interested in. It's really funny, these decision points in our lives. When I was much, yeah. Anyway, I won't tell you about tennis and guitar, but it's very similar. But there was a point where I'm like, okay, I want to do these two things, and one was like learn. There's this woman here in Portland who teaches classes on native plants and indigenous medicine and stuff like that. And she taught it at our school, and she came to talk to our class, and I was talking with her, and I was just so enthralled with the work that she was doing, because she's doing all kinds of stuff around here, or she was. And the other person, but I didn't follow up with her, and I'm not going to say her name because I didn't end up doing anything with her. Because the other person I wrote to was Tom Spanbauer, who is also just an amazing writer, and from here in Portland, Oregon. And he had this writing group called Dangerous Writers, which it's sort of famously known. One of the famous writers from that group was Chuck Palahniuk. And apparently that's where Chuck wrote Fight Club. But it was many, many years before I got into that group. So
yeah,
the other thing that I did was I got a hold of Tom Spanbauer, and he actually wrote me back. And I think I just interviewed, and I think I said I called him. But I think I emailed him and he called me back. He gave me his phone number and called me, and he called me and then gave me his phone number then and said, let me know when you're ready, and we'll, and so we figured it out. And so after I graduated from grad school, I started at Dangerous Writers and was there for 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I started my own reading series, which went for 6 years. That was very well attended.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Burnt Tongue.
Burnt Tongue. Yeah, it was very well attended. It was amazing. We had usually 12, 13 writers, 5 minutes apiece. An intermission. Sometimes in intermission we would have like music. And my whole thing was just getting people who'd never written before or never read their work before out loud together with people who were at least locally sort of very well known in terms of readings and stuff like that. But people who because what happened was I was in this writing group, and there were some wonderful people in Tom's writing group, the Dangerous Writers. We called the writing space the basement. So because it was the basement.
Yeah.
So in the basement, there were so many people in the basement who had this amazing writer, had been writing for years and years and years, and had never read out loud to anybody. I hadn't either at that. Well, I just me standing up saying stuff and poetry when I was a kid, maybe, but I hadn't never either. I hadn't read anything out loud either. But this is long. So, Pank magazine, which is relatively well known here, it's pretty well known here. It's a literary magazine here. Was doing this reading here in Portland, and I had published my first piece with them. The first short story I ever tried to publish got picked up by them, and Roxane Gay was the editor, and it was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, it was really cool to work with her. But the person that she was working with at Pank, M. Bartley Siegel, was doing this thing called Pank Invasions. They were doing it all around the U.S. Or not all around the U.S. There were like two or three different locations. Anyway, I helped him find the location here and helped set up the reading. And then from that, I was like, I'd also done all kinds of activism in my life and helped set up other kinds of like events and done some event planning stuff. So it was like kind of natural for me to be like, hey, I want to do this myself. So I originally was just going to have a reading on my birthday. And then a friend of mine said, I can't be there for your birthday. So why don't you have your reading on your birthday? And then when I come to town, maybe we can do something else. And that made me be like, hey. So that August, I was like, okay. I started my own reading at a public space. It went for 6 years. It was amazing. There's recordings of it, blah, blah, blah. But yeah. This is what happens when you try to interview me. I go all over the place.
No, it's wonderful. You're touching on things that I did want to ask you about. And among other things, the fact that, you were writing, which is not a solo thing. Like you said, community is very important to activate us sometimes, but it is something you do firsthand by yourself. And then,
absolutely,
and then there's this pull to allow other people to start writing too, and to take on a certain role for them as a facilitator or organizer. So thank you for mentioning that piece of the story. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, that's like I think when we had our little last retreat we had at the beach a couple of weeks ago. It's the first one we'd ever
had. Tell us
had.
About that.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have but just what do you mean? Who is we? And
sorry.
What was that?
Corporeal Writing had a beach retreat, so we went to the ocean with 25 participants and all of our staff, and got to write for the weekend and teach, and it was beautiful. It was amazing, and we're going to probably do it again. I am very much in favor of doing it again, which everybody knows, and so everybody that I work with knows that, and I think we're all pretty much in favor because it was really beautiful. But what I came away with, what were we talking about right before that?
The fact that you became an organizer, after writing, you allowed other people to write.
Right. Oh, the thing that came out, it came up in conversation, was that it's kind of funny because my dream of being a writer and a social worker as a kid, of course, my natural sort of ability to talk with people and to kind of talk with anybody really, and find commonalities, and even people that I would normally, like, we have completely different views about things. I talk to people all the time, like that I don't, I want to know who they are. I don't care what their beliefs are necessarily. Like, not that I don't care, but it's not concerning to me that we can't find some sort of commonality, So so my desire to help pull people together, and to create cohesiveness or community or friendly spaces or something like that comes very naturally to me. And so that it just made sense to me to do that. And so what we were saying last weekend is, like, I'm still doing social work, like I'm still doing social work because the things that come up in our writing, the writing times that we have together in our writing spaces, the things that come up for people are really, really intense and beautiful and not private, very, very important, but they're things that you can't, people don't just share anywhere, It's a very spiritual, for me, it's a very spiritual thing. And I don't even know how to I don't even know what spiritual means to anybody else. But to me, it means feeling like there's this other energy that bonds or connects or links us, whether like, not like spores, but like spores, like mycorrhizal spores and stuff through trees, like, I mean, mushrooms, and the connection, the roots of trees and things like that. I think I just want everybody to get along when it boils down to it. But which is creating community. But if you take it down all to its very, very barest roots, I don't know if I had a natural ability to create community, or if that it was because I was a peacemaker as the youngest child in my family, in a sort of violent situation. I was always playing peacemaker. And so it's very natural for me to want people to get along and be together. And that space is, and I truly value what people think and the stuff they're bringing to the table. It's like, oh, I find out new stuff all the time, and I want people to be able to try to find their truest words and have a voice.
Yeah. All right. This is the part where I want to be an advertiser for your services, because I know you work with writers and you help them write whatever book or piece they're working on. What would you like to say about that? How do you work with them, and how do you like it?
I actually have an editing service that I've been doing now for the past few months called Tongue and Groove, through Corporeal Writing. I named it Tongue and Groove Editing because it's actually kind of more of a, it's like coaching and editing at the same time, but it's a support service. And do you want to know actually how I do it? You want to know?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of. Basically, it's really similar in some ways to how we do virtual hours, in that they send me people will send me their pages. First, they'll reach out to me and say, here's this project I have going on. Do you think this is a good fit? And if it's not a good fit, I'll be like, actually, I think I know someone who's got those skills that would be great for where you're at right now, and I'll give them that information.
Yeah.
But what I do with people basically is I get their pages, and we talk about where they are and where they want to go with their pages, and I, I it's more than I do. I reflect back to them what I've seen, and what they're doing. But what's different for my, I don't know if it's different for everybody, but from everybody else. But the thing that I find most helpful is that we get together. I read their pages. I do not give them written quote unquote feedback.
Right.
It's I have conversations with them about their work, and they write the notes in language that they understand.
I love it.
Yeah, and the reason I do that is because I've been in writing groups, I've been in grad school, I've been working with other people in writing for a long time, and I can tell you I've got piles and piles and piles of pages with notes on them that half the time I don't know exactly what they meant. I don't know what to do next. And they end up, I literally have a box over there with pages that I don't want to let go yet because they're commentary from people that I love and care about. So I just haven't let them go. But in terms of my writing work, it's really hard for me to connect with what they were talking about when it's on the page. I have a hard time with written stuff. And that's not the only
Yeah.
reason I do it. I'm not the only one who thinks that either. So I wanted to build a coaching slash editing practice that would allow for people who think like me to be able to actually sit and talk for an hour about the work. And we'll go through the pages together. And I will point out the things that I saw, and I will point out the things that work for me. And I will have suggestions more than I do in virtual hours about, like, hey, I could see this going this way, or I could see this going this way, or what do you think about this? But what I
Yeah.
do mostly is ask questions about where they want to go, and really try to let them know that whatever crazy thing they want to try, um, or whatever thing that's like nobody would ever else give. Like, I want to give people permission. I want them to give themselves permission to play with their work
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
open it up and figure out what it is they really want to say and how they want to say it. And I've got 3 different clients right now that are writing in completely different ways, and it's just so inspiring and just amazing to see what they're doing. And like one guy is a world builder and has these really complex, beautiful scenes of this sort of post-apocalyptic or utopia or a dystopian world. And another
Yeah.
person's sort of mixing academic writing with beautiful poetic and uh, very almost melodic sometimes, but beautiful, like poetic language,
Yeah.
and just cool storytelling. And then um, it's just, it kind of blows me away. And the other person that I'm working with has this like epic sort of like adventure, but it's all about like self-discovery and about a family, um, about being very different from their family and how people from completely disparate points of view can still honor their story. So anyway, so I've got 3 different, completely different things, and it's great. And I'm finding that so far, this style of helping people get through their work is very helpful. It seems to be very helpful. And yeah, they both hired me for, all 3 of them have hired me for, and well, 2 of them have hired me for another round. The other one
Yeah.
is already longer than the others. So anyway, my point is like using
Yeah.
those skills to like help people get into their work. and do it in the most supportive way possible that I can, and help them trust themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so listeners, you heard. If you need Domi's services, and I highly recommend them. You can find them on Corporeal Writing's website, corporealwriting.com. I want to get to the last segment of the interview, really the last question.
Can I say one more thing first?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry. Aside from my one-to-one stuff, and aside from which, costs a little more money, and I want it to be more accessible. I can be flexible on some stuff, but the other thing in virtual hours, right? I don't think we mentioned that the virtual hours that Brune and I, that we have, those are all completely free. I just wanted to mention that. Yeah. And then the other thing is that we also have, of course, the thing that Corporeal was built on was writing labs, classes that we call labs. And we could also work together in community that way. And it's a four-week thing, and we meet once a week on the web, and the rest of it you get videos of Lidia and I for that one. And then you do your writing, and then we come back and talk about the writing. So thank you. I just wanted to add that in there because that's the other way to get into your writing that's different prices and stuff.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Tons of offerings, and you can also follow Corporeal Writing on different social media platforms to stay updated on your offerings throughout the year. You have your seasonal workshops, creative labs, apologies.
Good job.
And also you often invite other authors to give creative labs with you at Corporeal. And so to finish up, this last segment is called, maybe I'll find a better name in the future. Here's how I called it: Great Things About the Future. That's the title of the segment. So Domi, it's the year 2123. Every person who is born on this planet, 1, knows from a young age that their emotional truth matters. And 2, knows that there are all kinds of spaces available to them that reinforce the fact that they belong just as they are, where they can tell a story that matters to them and or witness strangers do the same. What are some ways that humans have found to make that a reality?
I think not only in the writing world, I think the way that has become a reality is actually sharing your writing and writing in community. Because if you can get to the point where you are understanding another person because of the words they put on the page, you might not feel so alone in your own world, and it creates a connection. And 2, you might help somebody else not feel so alone, which is actually one of my main reasons for writing, is because I know I struggled with so much stuff. And then when I heard that other people were struggling too, I'm like, oh, it's not just me. Okay. And I want to offer that to other people. Just trying to be as open and vulnerable as for me, be as open and vulnerable as I can, and invite people in as much as possible to tell their story exactly who they are, and to tell their story. That is so imperative. It's not a competition. It's not try to take competitiveness out of it, and try to encourage people to write stories that can be generalized to the greater population, to try to get some sort of understanding and create more tendrils out to each other, so that we have a safety net just in our connections, so that we aren't disconnected and miscommunicating and fighting each other, that we're finding some commonalities and some in relying on people's strengths and the things that they're able to do, um, and be gentle and generous with each other about all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for this conversation, Domi. As always, it's a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much, Brune. Yeah, it's
talking
very
to
much
you
a
and getting to know you
a pleasure.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I had just misspoke. So I was changing it. Yeah.
And okay, so where can people, aside from corporeal writing, where can people read your work and get in touch with you?
I do have a website called domishoemaker.com. It doesn't have a whole bunch of stuff on there, but it's got some of my stuff on there. And it's not a blog, it's not continually active, but you can read my stuff there and get links to where my stuff is published. And other ways to contact me are on the socials. Yeah.
Amazing. I'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you,
very
Domi,
much.
and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Okay, I'll see you soon. Take care, Brune.
Bye.
Bye.
If this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to me if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to do each or all of these 3 things. First, can you please follow or subscribe to Première Personne? While you're there, if you'd be willing to give me a 5-star rating and review and share an episode you loved with a friend, I would be so grateful. Première Personne is produced by me, Brune Smith, and you can email me through the contact form at experiencenarrative.com. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.